And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country. Good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes. I've been fascinated watching the sort of song and dance from Gayton McKenzie around whether or not he'll stay in the National Coalition. And this is all about Kenny Kunene, the deputy leader of the Patriotic Alliance. I mean, to sort of slightly oversimplify, Kenny Kunene was found at the home of a sort of wanted criminal by the police. He then was suspended by his own party. Gayton McKenzie said, we'll conduct an independent investigation, but I know that he will be cleared. Then the independent investigation from one of the Santon law firms, which as far as I know, only spoke to people that either work for or are friends of Kenny Kunene and no one else, cleared him. And now Gayton McKenzie is saying if he's not reinstated as the member of the Mayoral Committee for Transport in Joburg, we'll pull out of the National Coalition. And the question I keep coming back to is, and if you do, so what? I mean, you're not the biggest party. And this is the brutal fact of electoral maths. If the ANC and the DA decide to work together, well, then the coalition holds. It is that simple. I mean, we can argue and scream and shout and be frustrated by that all we like, but that's what the numbers tell us. And at the same time, in Joburg, things are in a bit of a flux. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but I don't see what Gayton McKenzie really gets from leaving the coalition, except, and this is a sort of political view rather than a business one, is that he might want to be differentiating himself from the coalition, and it's all about that. Never mind, though, there's plenty of money to talk about with Gayton McKenzie because he also controls funding for the arts. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And there's a story here about governance and transport and Joburg too with Kenny Kunene, the chair of the National Arts Festival. Professor Siphiwo Mahala will be on your radio in just a moment. Also on your radio tonight, Magda Wazitskia, the co-founder of Signia, essentially saying that you should not really get too involved in sort of speculative cryptocurrency trading. Very interesting comments about it and maybe a note of caution. I'll ask her a question as well about how she sees the sort of long-term future of banking in a cryptocurrency era. Sizani Baloyi, a really striking visual artist. So he's someone that really focuses on communities, how they're living, the structures they're living in. And there's a bit of politics to his work. I mean, like all great art has a bit of politics, often quite a lot of politics to it. But we'll talk about that. And don't forget the Friday Biz Blitz as well this evening. All sorts of questions coming through. Good to hear from you on 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice notes tonight on 072 702 1702. Good evening, 12 minutes after 6.
The Money Show
With Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, the arts and culture is also the Minister of Sports, Minister Gayton McKenzie, saying about a week ago now that arts festivals have not been reporting back to his department about the money that they've spent. He's asking questions about their accountability. Now, if you run one of these festivals, I'm thinking of the National Festival of the Arts, for example, around Makanda, you would be very nervous. Government funding really matters. And from what I can see, Gayton McKenzie, the minister, is not basing his comments necessarily on fact. Professor Siphiwo Mahala is the chair of the National Arts Festival. Professor, good evening. I do appreciate the time. We know government funding is absolutely vital for you. Do you believe the minister's not being fair when he claims festivals are not accounting for their money?
Good evening, Stephen. Thanks for having me here. Well, there might be such cases, but we don't know of them. We have a collective of 13 festivals, including the National Arts Festival, which I represent, and many others, Vote Fierce, Kaka and Ka, that actually have had a relationship with the department and have reported on the expenditure on the funds that they have received before. And the department has a very interesting system whereby you are paid in tranches. In other words, you don't get the final tranche unless you have submitted a comprehensive report together with audited statements. And these 10 festivals that I speak on behalf of have, complied with all these requirements. So I'm not sure what the minister is referring to.
Okay, so in other words, if you were able to hold, say, a successful National Festival of the Arts, to do that, you would automatically have had to comply with all of the regulations just to get the final bits of money that you needed.
Absolutely. That is when you have funding, when you get funding from the Department of Arts and Culture. Unfortunately, this year, we hosted the National Arts Festival without any funding from the National Department of Arts and Culture. And when we did in years before, 2024, you would recall that we celebrated our 50th anniversary. We did get a tranche from the National Department of Arts and Culture, and we reported accordingly. Unfortunately, since then, we have tried to engage with the department. We've sent several letters, but we never got a response.
Do you know why that decision was taken? Do you know if that money's going to other festivals? I mean, that maybe we could make a case. Could the money be going elsewhere? We are a sports-mad society.
We can only speculate based on the minister's social media activity, which I think is a very unfortunate way of communicating. Hence, we are calling for an urgent engagement with the minister. He has made some claims online saying some of the festivals haven't been accounting. And he does say, fortunately, that they will fund festivals. But there are hard questions to be asked. And we are ready to listen to those hard questions. The most unfortunate thing is that some of these festivals have taken place already, and we had to do so at a significantly reduced amount. And as you might know, Joy of Jazz begins today, and it begins without the funding from the National Department of Arts and Culture. And these are some of the festivals that were part of the flagship projects supported by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture.
And I mean, if he's demanding that you are accountable with money you get from government, he too, it must follow, he too must be accountable for spending it elsewhere. He must explain where it went. And it can't just be in the fun and games of social media. It needs to be in the dry, audited accounts that are submitted to whoever they're submitted to.
Yes, absolutely. And most importantly, we're interested to know, why certain decisions are taken, what, drives those decisions. In other words, is there a policy framework that is being followed in terms of funding certain cultural events and not others? And, right now we are dealing with a difficult situation of, changing schedules. You might know that one of the major funding open calls projects is Mzansi Golden Economy. And it was changed suddenly, and we're told that we have to apply afresh, and the projects that were considered were those that started in July. And unfortunately, the National Arts Festival, which has been around for over 50 years, happens in June. In fact, starts in June until the first week of July, meaning we lost out on that opportunity on the basis of the new time frames that were introduced unilaterally.
It's also thoughtless, isn't it? It's almost as if the people who are making the decisions don't really understand the sector they're working in.
Well, the most unfortunate thing is that we do not know the reasoning behind. I would confidently say really is unreasonable, but we don't even know the reasons. Hence, we've been calling for a robust and constructive engagement with the minister and the department.
Professor, thank you. Professor Siphiwo Mahala is the chair of the National Arts Festival. You can imagine the frustration from people in this sector. Your views on arts festivals, I found that they are very valuable. They're outlets. They make us think about ourselves and each other. You may have a different view. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567.
702. Stephen is on X
At at Stephen Grootes.
Well, it's emerged this week, the bank Signia is warning investors it deals with that they should not put more than 5% of their discretionary assets or living annuities into crypto funds. Of course, there's a huge push in this direction. The US president leading the charge to an extent. Magda Wazitskia is the co-founder of Signia Limited. Magda, good evening. Good to talk to you again. I do appreciate the time. Thank you. Around the world, there's huge enthusiasm for cryptocurrencies and particularly for Bitcoin. You seem to be a bit more cautious.
Well, it's nice to be on the show. I'm actually not sufficiently cautious not to launch a Bitcoin fund.
Sure.
So I do believe that there is a space after all these years for some exposure to cryptocurrencies for those who have an interest in this field. However, given that Bitcoin has been hogging the limelight because of President Trump's policies and making it a reserve currency and the share price of Bitcoin or price of Bitcoin skyrocketing, all of a sudden you have a lot of unsophisticated investors trying to benefit from what is a highly volatile asset with no real economic underpin to it, and which to date has been used as, a speculative investment. However, there is this interest, and what Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have going for them is that the prices are not correlated to the movements of the market or the economy. So, my belief is that there is a space for crypto investing in Bitcoin in particular, or a case in point, in anyone's well-diversified portfolio. But you don't want to bet everything on something that could fall in value as sharply as it has risen.
Okay.
So I'm not anti, I'm just pro-caution.
I mean, maybe I've sort of misunderstood what you've been saying, but in a way, when you say that there's really nothing to underpin the value, and yet you're launching a fund that includes this, I mean, it's almost as if you're in a position where you kind of have to do something because otherwise people are going to go elsewhere. I mean, you're kind of stuck following the crowd a little bit, maybe.
No, not quite that. I think we're the first company in South Africa to launch a Bitcoin fund. So it's not about, people necessarily going anywhere else. We don't really have competition in this field at the moment in South Africa. But it's more about, I actually do fundamentally believe that, having some crypto exposure is good. It's the exposure to the new world and the new economy. But you need to do so in a careful manner. And at the moment, if you want to buy Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, you need to understand the concept of cryptocurrency exchanges, of wallets, of spreads, of trading, all the things that people actually have no idea about, and can find themselves in trouble by, relying on their own understanding of what is actually quite a complex financial services space. So launching a Bitcoin fund was motivated by offering investors who want exposure to Bitcoin a safe way of doing that in a protected environment where, a professional regulated financial services company is looking after that investment rather than allowing people to, speculate on unknown exchanges.
There is a group of people, and Magda, I'm sure you've met them, so have I, who believe that cryptocurrencies are going to take over the world, that governments as we know it aren't going to be able to regulate money in any way, central banks will have nothing to do, that banking as we know it is going to disappear. What role do you believe banks like yours are going to be playing 20 years from now? I mean, do you think the role of banks like yours and central banks is going to be as big as it is now?
So this is, apologies. Signia isn't a bank. We're an asset management company. But the question is very valid in the context of what will artificial intelligence and AI do to asset management, and then wrap it around cryptocurrencies as a way of investing. And the question of where will an asset management company be in 20 years' time is a very good one. In terms of central banks, I don't think that, and Bitcoin has been around for, over more than a decade. And initially, when it appeared and blockchains appeared on the horizon, the narrative became one of decentralized financing and irrelevance of central banks and irrelevance of normal currencies. The truth of the matter is that, one, it hasn't happened. Two, it's unlikely to happen. So what can be done to prevent kind of this complete decentralization of monetary policy? Regulation. It's as simple as that, and we have already seen regulation of crypto investments coming to the fore in absolutely every jurisdiction. So the idea that central banks will allow themselves to be sidelined in terms of, the control of inflation or managing of economic growth in any one country, I think is, slightly delusional. Or at least it won't happen in a lifetime. Maybe delusional is wrong. It won't happen in a lifetime. So, I'm not particularly concerned about that. I think the central banks in a decade or 20 years will be exactly where they are now.
Magda, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Magda Wizitskia is the co-founder of Signia Limited, the asset manager. 25 minutes now after 6.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Viv Governder's portfolio manager at Rand Swiss. Viv, good evening. Strong day for platinum and gold bouncing back quite strongly too.
Yes. I mean, we had some news from the U.S. around inflation that meant that interest rates were coming down, or the chance of interest coming down increased. And that obviously meant that people are looking back at what they consider to be harder value assets. And, obviously gold is the direct comparison. And platinum seems to be, working in conjunction with gold at the moment. I think people are seeing it as almost a substitute for gold. So when gold rises, we do tend to find platinum rising at the moment.
I mean, how much, it's an impossible question, but platinum through this week's actually, I think, risen more than gold. We know that platinum production is down, platinum stocks are down, platinum's also at a much lower point, of course, than gold in the cycle, which may suggest there's a lot more room for platinum than there is for gold over the next year.
Most certainly, there could be. The thing with platinum is that it has a very, very strong industrial use, which is basically for catalytic converters. And then as the emergence of electric vehicles started to rise over the last little while, what we saw was people moving away from it. But there's a well-known economic principle is that when people think that the demand for something is going to fall, what often happens is supply falls before the demand falls. People stop producing it before the demand totally disappears, and then we do tend to find a bit of a shortage happening there. That could be one reason for that. But I think also the fact of the matter is, platinum is a precious metal. Platinum jewelry is something that people will accept, like they would accept gold jewelry. It's not at the same level as silver. It's much closer to gold. And if the gold price is 3,800, just about, the platinum price at less than half that, just becomes quite an attractive alternative. And for those that don't recall, there's a reason that gold records are smaller than platinum records in terms of the amount of sales. It's because at one point in time, platinum was the more valuable metal.
I remember those days. They seem like a long time ago now, and I suppose they were. GDP figures coming in the US in the last couple of days, those inflation figures as well, they do seem to tell us that despite everything, the US economy is very strong.
Look, I don't know for certain, quite frankly. The reason for this is that, we've been in some really massive revisions on some of these U.S. economic numbers, especially around employment and so on. We had that employment number for the last year until March this year, basically, come out at 1 million jobs less than had been calculated and estimated for the previous year. I do wonder just, how accurate some of these measurements are around the U.S. at the moment and where we'll see revisions coming through, number one. Some of the economic, numbers do seem to be in conflict. The employment numbers versus the growth numbers do seem to be in conflict. And there are also conflicting, questions about demand of the U.S. economy, etc. The one thing I would have to mention is that if the U.S. economy is growing, we have seen a real, change in the structure of that economy over the last little while. Not this quarter, but the last one. I saw, for instance, that AI, the AI infrastructure, out there, the extra investment in AI infrastructure actually contributed more to that growth number that they got in the last period, not this period, the last period, did all of consumer spending, which is like 2/3 of that economy. It's
wow.
So obviously it's a change in AI versus the change in consumer spending, not the magnitude. But it's crazy that that was true. So I do think that we're having a changing economy, and I do wonder if maybe the underlying structure of the economy is changing enough that some of these stuff is based on surveys and being translated over to models, because the underlying economy is changing so much, those models may not be as applicable, and therefore we may get numbers that are not as accurate as they once were.
Sure. And then the rand, quite a strange week in a way. It was a little stronger earlier in the week, but ending it a little weaker.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the dollar to rand at the moment, it ended the week at just about 17.50 or something like that. If you basically 17.35. If you look at the last 5 days or so, I mean, there's been a pretty range bound, just around about 17.30 to 17.40, and the fact that we ended the week right in the middle of that is, I think, appropriate. But I do think that the GDP number that we got, like you mentioned, was quite hot yesterday. The number does reduce the chance of a rate cut, and I think that's why we saw the weakness come through in the currency, because obviously the dollar strengthened. And today's inflation number, completely opposite, brought basically the people believe in rate cuts, more to the fore. That's why the rand it's going to strengthen again.
Viv Governor, thanks so much. Portfolio Manager at Rand Swiss. Really appreciate the time on The Money Show. Just gone 6:30.
The Money Show.
The Friday File.
The Friday File.
16 minutes to 7. Don't forget the Friday Biz Blitz in a few moments. One of the things that South Africa does, I think, better than anyone is produce artists. And I think it's partly because of the struggles in our society that happens. And one of the people whose work is just so striking is the contemporary South African visual artist, Sizani Baloyi, who's agreed to speak to you this evening. Sizani, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us on Friday File.
Well, thank you so much to you and the listeners as well.
I was looking through some of the descriptions of your work and some of your pieces online this afternoon. And I mean, what keeps coming through, there's certain themes that are about how people live, the sort of dwellings, the houses, the structures that they're living in, and the sort of, in a way, a kind of failure of the promise. I don't know if I'm getting you exactly. What is it about? Yeah. What exactly are you focusing on? I mean, in a way, your work is, you can't remove politics from it.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it's about the struggle of housing, especially in South Africa. We cannot dispute the change that has been happening, especially since 1994. But one thing that we are certainly about is that change is not accessible to everyone. And noting that most South Africans move from their own provinces into places of better employment, places with better opportunity. But when they get there, they actually don't have places of settlement. So my work speaks about the issue of housing, places of settlement, and also dives also into the rights that are being abused. We have in our Bill of Rights a right to a shelter, but that is not accessible to everyone.
Is there a sort of idea there that maybe it's a shelter or it's a dwelling or it's a structure, but it's not a home?
Yeah, so I use the central figure of a shed. So instead of mostly speaking about the negative side that we do not have. So I grew up in a small community of squatter camps in Soweto in Snake Park. So when I moved from Limpopo coming to Joburg, I have this view of Joburg. When you are back in the villages, when you see people coming from Joburg home, you kind of feel like Joburg is this beautiful space. You walk on lawns, there's huge buildings inside. So when I first came to Joburg, little did I know that we were living in a small community of squatter camp. And I was a little bit surprised to say, oh, this place, I think even back at home, it's much better than where we are settled at this moment. So I kind of the life that they were living right there, being able to take these lost and found pieces of corrugated iron and build homes and communities as well. So that kind of like brought the inspiration to my work that,
I'm just going to ask you. Yeah, Sizani, I'm sorry. I'm just going to ask you to move around just to try and improve the reception on your cell phone. When you create these images, they're incredibly powerful. Do you find beauty in them? Is beauty something that you're interested in while you are creating these images?
Yeah, it's also something that I'm interested in. I kind of feel like our African stories have been told so much from the side of sympathy, not pride. So in my structures as well, especially the use of color, I kind of like embrace the good moments that we share in those spaces, that we are able to become a home, we are able to share meals in these spaces. And some of these sheds, when you enter into them, they are well decorated inside that you would think you are in a different space when you enter into them, you know.
I mean, I've spoken to the group Abakhali Basum Jondolo many times. You'll know them, the Shack Dwellers movement. And whenever I speak to them, I mean, I know they're sort of a political movement as well, and I can't blame them for that. But there's a sense of everything you speak of, community pride, but I would add to that organization, resilience, so many things that are coming out, and none of it, and it is about, I mean, there's maybe a bit of Biko there, because it is about doing it for yourself. You don't want to rely on anyone. You don't want sympathy.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's true. I think being able to stand up for ourselves as well, because of most of the people, they rely much more on the government as well as dwelling on their challenges instead of embracing life and seeing how they can change their surrounding and have a better life.
I made the point that your work is political. Are you trying to change minds through your work? Is that one of your aims?
Yeah, that is one of my aims. And it's more of trying to also bring awareness, you know. And one thing that I've noticed with most of the shack dwellers as well is that some of them, they do have the ability that they can build up their own houses, just that they don't have land to kind of like do that as well. And when you try to look and investigate, some of those that are still there in shacks, they do have RDP houses, but it's not them in those RDP houses, you know. So somehow I kind of feel like politically we are also disadvantaged as well in these communities.
Sizani, I hope you don't mind me saying this, and I'm sure you're very aware of it, but there's a sort of irony in it. Your images are very powerful, they're very political, they're about a sense of poverty, and yet they're on sale to rich people, and only rich people can buy them. I mean, I'm sure you're very aware of that.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's I kind of like have a feeling of there are people, because when I'm looking at my clientele, mostly it will be white people and black and rich people. I think it's people who kind of like relate with the work. I remember I was at Art Eye Gallery one day, and there's a guy who stood there and he was like, "This reminds me of home." And it's a Chinese guy. I was like, and I never knew that even in China they have these settlement of squatter camps, you know, they have shacks such as that. And you look at Brazil, they have shacks as well. So there are people who have kind of like moved from that space in life, but they can still relate with my work somehow, or people who have experienced that kind of a life as well. I think they are mostly people who are more ready to connect to my work and engage with the storytelling as well.
I'm sure that some people have quite a strong reaction to your work. I'm sure they come to you and say, "Look, you know, I felt like this or I felt like that," and it took me a while to sort of unscramble what this work was saying to me about myself.
Yeah, that's true. I met one guy in a gallery and was like, you know, before you came in and presented your work, it was like, I looked at your work and I was angry about how the past governance has treated us and all those things. And then when I started speaking about my work, giving them the artist statement about the work, said, no, I have to go back and re-look at the work. Hopefully, because of what you are speaking about, I'm now starting to see it in your work. Instead of being in a place of being a victim, kind of like embrace being proud of who we are and where we are from.
It's quite amazing. I mean, you're from Guyana, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I was in an Uber the other day and the driver asked the driver where he's from. He said, no, I'm from a small town called Guyana. And I was like, I don't think it's a small town anymore. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I mean, that journey from Guyana to Joburg, do you think it's still as big a difference as it was then?
Not very much, actually. I think back in those days, it was really fascinating. Now that you can I think it's about 4-hour drive. If you're on max speed, but it's not fascinating as it used to be back in the day.
It's very different.
Because of mostly more of the things now, they are almost the same. The same opportunities that you would get in Joburg, you still get them in Guyana. The infrastructure as well is developing. Things are changing up. Actually, yeah.
Sizani, it's fascinating. Thank you. Your work, as I say, is incredibly striking, incredibly provocative, very political. Sizani Baloyi is the South African visual artist. And you can go online and just have a look at some of the images that he's created, very much about kind of where we are, I suppose, as opposed to where we want to be.
Stephen Grootes
Taking your calls
on 011-883-0702.
5 minutes now to 7, time for the Friday Biz Blitz on The Money Show. You know how it works. We give you a question. You call us. If you get the answer correct, we move on to the next question. If you get it wrong, we move on to the next caller. Okay, 011-883-0702 and 021-446-0567. First question on the Friday Biz Blitz. Which invention still could not give Donald Trump and Melania Trump a lift, even while they were visiting the UN building? It's one of those questions we got to listen to the words. Which invention couldn't give Donald Trump and Melania Trump a lift as they were visiting the United Nations building in New York this week? 011-883-0702, 021-446-0567.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by Absa CIB, banking on local growth with Club Med South Africa to bring the first resort of its kind to the country.
The Money Show, Friday Biz Blitz.
Which invention still couldn't give Donald Trump and Melania Trump a lift at the UN building, Lachodi, in Craigall Park? Do you know the answer?
The answer is an escalator.
It is an escalator, Lachodi, yes. Okay, second question. Here we go. Multi-choice is going to be controlled by which French company? We spoke to their CEO this week.
Is it Canal Plus?
It is Canal Plus, Lachodi. Okay, third question. Rupert Murdoch and Oracle's Larry Ellison are the alleged part owners of which company, which is currently owned by ByteDance?
TikTok.
Wow, Lachodi, yes. TikTok, yes. Okay. Which Formula One driver pulled out of a tyre test with Pirelli this week to be with his bulldog Roscoe, because his bulldog Roscoe is sick? Which Formula One driver are we talking about, Lachodi?
Lewis Hamilton?
Sheesh, yes. Yes, Lachodi, wow. Okay, yes. So he pulled out of the Pirelli test because his dog is in a coma. All right, Lachodi, you're on a roll. Here we go. Lisa Cook is a governor of which bank? Oh, Lachodi, don't fail me now.
United States Reserve Bank?
You're almost there on the wording, Lachodi. I mean, you've had such a roll. Come on, it's the U.S. what? Come on, Lachodi.
Federal Reserve.
Yes, Lachodi, it is the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Okay. We've only got 2 questions left. Here we go. Remgro, a holding company chaired by Johan Rupert, controls about 20% of which Dutch beer in South Africa?
I'm going to take a guess and say Heineken.
Oh, Lachodi, it's Heineken.
Wrong one.
No, it is Heineken. Did someone give me the answers to this in advance? Wow. Okay. Name the $1 trillion company that has invested $100 billion in open AI.
Would that be Apple?
Oh, no, Lachodi, it's not Apple. Oh, Lachodi.
my God.
No. Wow, Lachodi, I can't believe it. No. Okay. The $1 trillion company that's invested $100 billion in open AI. Dev and Midrand, do you know the answer? Dev is gone. Robin Fairlands, do you know the answer?
NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, yes. Oh, Rob, congratulations. Oh, Lachodi. It's 7 o'clock.